match, I think. In Washington, D.C., we like to get in the same arena. We like to fight the same fight, beginning with one of the fights that President Obama brought to us. Does anyone remember the $1 trillion stimulus bill? And we were all promised that we would never see unemployment go above 8% if we spent $1 trillion, right? So let me ask you a question. Did President Obama correctly diagnose the problem with job creation?
No.
Did he have the correct solution with spending $1 trillion?
No.
What's his level of credibility on job creation?
No.
Not so much. That's right. Iowans are very intelligent people, besides being extremely good-looking and very well-tempered. Also, another area that Steve and I have teamed up and worked a lot on is the issue of Obamacare, the government takeover of health care. Let me ask you, did the president correctly diagnose the problem with health care in this country?
No.
It was high costs, wasn't it? The high cost of health care. Did he correctly diagnose the solution?
No.
No, he didn't understand that free markets would help us bring the cost down. What's his credibility on Obamacare?
No.
Not so much, that's right. Oh, we're working here. Okay, so now remember when the president talked about how during the Obamacare negotiations, all of the negotiations would be like this today, what Steve King is providing for you on C-SPAN. Did that happen?
No.
What's the president's level of credibility?
Zero.
Not so much, that's right. Okay, now I want to remind you, now that's not to mention that the president was 0 for 4 last year in his final 4 predictions. Do you remember that? Okay, we'll let him have that. Now he has us engaged in yet another third Middle Eastern war. And so I think, talk about March Madness, can anyone say Jimmy Carter?
Yeah.
But I am here in Iowa because this 2012 election is extremely important. How many of you feel the same way?
Yeah.
All of our chips are riding on 2012, and the candidate for 2012 has to know a few things. Number one, they have to clearly diagnose and understand the times that we're living in. Number two, they have to have solutions for the problems that America is facing. And number three, and perhaps even more important, is they have to have the political courage to stand up to the interests, stand up to Washington, D.C., stand up to the big spenders, and do what has to be done. That's what we need in our candidates. Of risk takers. That is how the nation started. I am an Iowan. I was born here in Waterloo, Iowa, at Allen Memorial Hospital, almost 55 years ago to the week. And I am a 7th generation Iowan. That's even better. My forebears were big, tall, strapping. I don't know where I came from in the DNA chain, but big, tall, strapping Norwegians who came from Sogndfjord, Norway, where it was only 2% tillable land. They risked everything to pack up their 5 children and come to Iowa because they heard that this was a land of milk and honey. And it's all true, isn't it? It's all true. Iowa is the land of milk and honey. Look, we had one person clap for Iowa being the land. I agree with you. I think you're absolutely right. Thank you. And yet, everything that my great-great-great-grandparents worked for, that your ancestors worked for, it's at risk today, isn't it? It's at risk today, and what happens between now and November 6th of 2012, especially here in Iowa, will forge the difference with what happens in 2012. Do you think you're up to it? I know you're up to it. I know you are. Because what we are about to determine together here in Iowa is whether or not, quite frankly, we will pass the American dream on to the next generation. This has faithfully happened, at least for the 7 generations that I know of here in Iowa, but for the generations that add up to approximately 20 generations of American history, every generation has faithfully pass that torch of liberty to the next one, but we know it's at risk, and I want to share briefly with you a few statistics about what's happening today. Let's start with the number 75. 75%, as a matter of fact. That is the amount the national debt has increased just under the 4 years that Nancy Pelosi held the gavel. It took us 231 years to establish something over $8 trillion in debt. It took her 4 years to run up $6 trillion more in deficit to get us up to $14 trillion. Now, of course, that made our Chinese banker friends very happy. And you know that the Chinese leader is named President Hu. His name is President Hu. So clearly we know now that Hu is your daddy. So here's another. Who says Iowa doesn't have a sense of humor? It's born right here. 107 trillion. Let's take a look at this number. That's an epic earlier here. 107 trillion. That's the estimated number of unfunded net federal liabilities in Social Security and Medicare. And when today's college students retire, my son, for instance, who's 24 years of age, they are looking upwards of 37% of their income just going to pay that figure. Let alone another 25% or so for their federal income tax, let alone their state income tax, let alone their property tax, let alone their sales tax, let alone their gas tax, let alone their every time you turn around tax. And they will have a very different future than the ones that our parents left for us. The next number, 35%. Guess what that is? That is now the highest corporate tax rate in the world, and it's in the United States of America. You only need to look at this number to know why we have outsourcing of jobs. We want the United States to be the best place for job creation in the world, and we can be. Cut taxes so that we can have jobs here in the United States, beginning with Iowa. Now, here's a very scary number for all of you, 3.8 million. What could that be? The IRS can't even tell you. This is approximately the number of words in the tax code. Happy reading. 3.8 million words. How many of you are filling out your tax forms right now? I'm a former federal tax lawyer. I've read some of these words. It's no fun. Let's make it simple. What about fairer? Anybody like a fair tax or a flat tax? I think it can safely be said that our current United States tax code is a weapon of mass destruction. Let's look at the number one. Number one, that's the number of new drilling permits under the Obama administration since they came into office. Gee, maybe that has something to do with this next figure. Let's take a look, $1.83. That is the price that gasoline was the day before Barack Obama took office as President of the United States. Is it time for a change? Absolutely, it's time for a change. I'm an entrepreneur with my husband. We've created 50 jobs in the state of Minnesota. We're proud of that. You cannot create jobs when you have a president that is unwilling to use American energy resources to solve our problems here in the United States. Let's look at our next number, 19 of 20. What could that be? That's the number of major metropolitan markets here in the United States where home prices have fallen in just the last quarter. What do you think the one major metropolitan area is? Washington, D.C., where the money spigot never shuts off. Why? Because they've got Iowa's money in Washington, D.C. Let's bring it home. Let's bring it back home. Let's go to our next number, 129. We have 129 miles that are currently under control at our southern border out of 2,000 miles. That is an incredible statistic. That's the highest level of security in interdicting illegal immigrants, and that's 129 miles. Let me read to you from the Department of Homeland Security, a senior official who said, quote, "Human smuggling constitutes a significant risk to our national security and public safety and could potentially be exploited by terrorist and other extremist organizations seeking entry. How many of you think that qualifies for one of the greatest understatements in our time? That's absolutely true. Let's go to our next set of numbers, 6,000. That's how many pages of rules has already been written in Washington, D.C. to implement Obamacare. And you thought that a 2,700-page bill was unwieldy? This is a bill that will never finish being written, because Washington will continue to redefine the government takeover of healthcare. Let's go to our next number, more than 1,000. That's the number of waivers that have already been granted to Obamacare. Is something missing here? Aren't we a nation that is equal protection under the law? I guess it's more equal for some than for others when you grant waivers to Obamacare. In fact, one of Steve King's and my colleagues this week, Anthony Weiner from New York, came out and now we're nice here. And Anthony Weiner said he wanted a waiver from Obamacare. Now this is rich because our colleague Anthony Weiner said that he wrote the bill for Obamacare. In fact, his quote was, "The bill and I are one." Now, if Anthony Weiner wants a waiver from Obamacare, I want mine too, and I don't know about you, but I want a waiver from the last 2 years of President Obama. Are you with me? Let's go to our last number. I think because of the great work that Steve King has been doing and I've been trying to do, we've tried to let the country know about this figure. $105,464,000,000. Does anyone know what I'm referring to? This is the money that was hidden in plain sight in the Obamacare bill in order to pre-fund the implementation of Obamacare. My opinion is this. I believe that President Obama needs to give this money back to the American people. Story, one radio show, or one TV story about this money. You can't just do this to the American people. Fail to tell them that when your representative votes for the government takeover of healthcare, they're also voting for $105 billion to fund it. You can't just do that. That's why they have to give the money back. And that's why also Steve King and I have worked very hard in our nation's capital together with other colleagues who have figured out what a problem Obamacare is. Every member of the House of Representatives voted to repeal Obamacare. And now we are calling on them to vote to defund Obamacare by agreeing to not pass one more spending bill unless President Obama gives this money back. But the real problem that underlines all of these figures is this. It's the fact that Washington, D.C. truly believes that all power and all money should be irrigated to them so that they can run and control your lives. Is that what Thomas Jefferson and our founders wrote in the Declaration of Independence and then in the Constitution of the United States? No. I don't think so. Thomas Jefferson said he could see into the future, that big government would be the problem. He said, let's bind them down with the Constitution. Weren't they wise in what they wrote? That was very wise, because what they understood is that the solution to our problem was not Washington, D.C. Because what do? They come up with really great ideas, like cowboy poetry festivals. That's a must-have. Or, like telling you which kind of light bulb you have to go down to your hardware store and buy. And by the way, just so you know, I introduced the Light Bulb Freedom of Choice Act. I think Iowas are to be trusted on the choice of their own light bulbs. They're really smart people. And who can access the internet, and what are schools that can teach? We don't need them to give us the answers to those questions. The ultimate arrogance, in my opinion, coming out of Washington is Obamacare. Because Obamacare will decide who your doctor is ultimately. They will say, oh, no, we aren't. Oh, yes, they will. With this bill, we're all going to be spending more and getting less. Now think of that. You get less, you spend more. What a deal! What a deal! No wonder in the last year, every week that Rasmussen has been taking a poll, never once has it gone below a majority of Americans, not just conservatives, not just Republicans, but it's never gone below a majority of Americans who want to see Obamacare repealed. As a matter of fact, this last week it was 62%, the highest number of Americans yet that want to see it repealed. I believe, the greatest power grab that we have ever seen, and I believe it is a crime against our constitutional republic, because the debt clock is ticking and it's changing now forever. We've seen how this movie is going to end. We've seen it in Greece. It's not a pretty picture. We've seen it in the UK. It's not a pretty picture. We've seen it in Spain. It's not a pretty picture. We've seen it in Madison, Wisconsin. It is not a pretty picture. And so again, the president is making the wrong calls. He's making the wrong calls, and I'm thankful that we have Republicans standing up like Governor Scott Walker in Wisconsin, Governor Kasich in Ohio, and standing up. Constitution holds the answer. This venerable document, gee, I don't think it was 2,700 pages long. It said this: we, the people, we are the answer to the problem today in the United States, because you need to be put back in charge of your own health care. You need to be allowed to create jobs, because you're the only one who knows how to create jobs. The federal government doesn't have a clue how to create jobs. You do. And you can choose what cars you drive, not a cars are. You can choose what light bulbs to screw into your lamps back home. You can choose all of these things. We don't need the government, because you understand the solution for taxing, you understand the solution for protecting our border, and research backs it up. It is families that are the solution and the ultimate building block for America. Because no stimulus, no entitlement reform, no health care initiative, no educational revamp can match the power of an intact two-parent family in driving economic growth, health, and well-being in the United States. Where my parents did divorce. I understand the difficulty and the difficulties that single parents have. And this is not to denigrate them in any way, but it's also to say our government needs to prefer a tax code and a policy that prefers family formation and the building up of families so that children have a safe environment to grow up, because no one loves them more than mom and dad. No government agency, no government bureaucrat. It's mom and dad. We've been told that we need a truce on social issues, and I would highly disagree with that, because the truth is social conservatism is fiscal conservatism. I mentioned just briefly about the fair tax. I am as a tax lawyer, as I told you earlier. My opinion is this: we make the tax code simpler by first abolishing it. So abolish what we have. And from there, we're going to fly, I have no doubt. We need a change in size in government. We need a change in attitude in government, because the attitude and the arrogance of Washington, D.C. having the answers is just not working out, because that is not what our forebears understood. That's not what I understand. That's not what you understand. That's not what our children need in the future. What we need is a change in address form for the person that's living at 1600 When my forebears immigrants came here in the 1850s, they did not come here for a handout. They did not come here for the government takeover of health care. They came here because they were wide-eyed with excitement at what the future would bring ultimately for a seventh-generation Iowan granddaughter. And they were willing to risk all to make it happen. They had the fruit, they bore the fruit of courageously waging, inch by inch, yard by yard, vote by vote, election by election, the battle for freedom, that we are the grateful recipients for what they have done. Which takes me back to another dark horse candidate. You may have heard of him. He's a prairie politician from a large nearby state. His name was Abraham Lincoln. And when he won his very doubtful election, which no one thought that he could win, he took a whistle stop tour from Springfield, Illinois, and he stopped off at Indianapolis, Indiana. And the nation, as you know, was on the precipice of war. His own life and his presidency was in danger. And Abraham Lincoln poured his heart out to the crowd at Indianapolis as they gathered. And I want to quote from Abraham Lincoln's words. He said, "I appeal to you constantly to bear in mind that it's not with the politicians, and it is not with presidents, and it is not with office seekers, but it is with you. And that is the question. Shall the Union and shall the liberties of this country be preserved to the latest generation?" And what Lincoln said at the back of the train is still true today in Des Moines, Iowa. It's with you. It's with you to make that decision. Will we survive to the latest generation? Will we survive? And as I am here listening and speaking to people in Iowa, I say to you, as wonderful as Steve King is, don't look to Steve King. Don't look to me. Don't look to any other politician, because the preservation of our nation, the preservation of liberty is too important to entrust it with mere politicians. The idea of liberty is so great and yet so precious that the founders recognized it could only be entrusted to the brain trust, and that's the people of this nation. Because they understood that it was our values that were the underpinning of this nation. John Adams wrote, "It is only for a moral and religious nation, this Constitution that we write. It is wholly unsuited for any other." And that's not saying what kind of religion a person has to have, or if they have to be religious at all. But what it is saying is that you cannot build a nation unless it is built upon a rock-solid foundation. And America has that. It is the character and it is the values of our people. And that's why I am so absolutely confident in 2012, because that hasn't gone away. In fact, what I've seen is the character and the strength and the morals and the values of the American people are getting more and more excited, because America has made their decision. They've decided we are going to take our country back. We are going to be our solution. We are going to have a better day. And so America has decided they're in for 2012. And so that's my question to you today here in Iowa. Are you in? Are you in for 2012?